Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. With your host, Dr. Drumm McNaughton, CEO of The Change Leader, a consultancy that helps higher ed leaders holistically transform their institutions. Learn more at changinghighered.com. And now, here's your host, Drumm McNaughton.
Thank you, David. My guest today is Dr. Scott Cowen, President Emeritus of Tulane University, where he served as its 14th president for 16 years. Scott is synonymous with leadership during crises. He shepherded New Orleans' recovery from Hurricane Katrina and led the efforts to transform Tulane, New Orleans' K-12 public schools, and its healthcare system. There are few people who are well qualified to talk about leadership as is Scott. He's written books on it, but more importantly, he's lived it. And Scott joins me today to talk about his new book, Lead and Succeed: Proven Strategies to Develop and Enhance Leadership Skills for Recent Graduates and Early Career Professionals, and how institution leaders can help them in this regard. Scott, welcome back to the program. My gosh, it has been a long time.
I'm delighted to be here with an old friend.
Thank you, sir. I feel the same way. It's an honor to be here. You have done so many incredible things in your career, not only with Tulane, but the city of New Orleans, the school district here. But we're not here to talk about that. We could for quite a long time.
Yep.
What I really want to do is talk about your new book that's coming out, Lead and Succeed: Proven Strategies to Develop and Enhance Leadership Skills for Recent Graduates and Early Career Professionals. I'm excited to read the book when it comes out. It'll be coming out here shortly, I think, right?
Yep.
If you would, give us a little bit of your background. I know you teach leadership. You've done it at Tulane. You've done it at Case Western. Give us a little bit of your background.
I was born and raised in New Jersey, so I'm a Jersey boy through and through. And you
Very
can
good.
think about what that really means right there. And when I was at Metuchen School, which is where I was, no one knew, by the way, at the time that I had dyslexia at that time, but I did quite well there. I was head of the football team. I was head of the student body. So I started leadership at those times. And then when I finished with Metuchen, I went to the University of Connecticut. I really liked Connecticut. Unfortunately, as it turned out, I got hurt and couldn't play the whole time that I was there. But they were kind enough to keep me there the entire time when I was at UConn.
This was your undergraduate, right?
This is my undergraduate, yeah.
Sure.
Then you may recall about that time right after was Vietnam and what was going on in Vietnam. And I was very concerned that I would be taken there. So what I decided instead was I jumped in myself to be an officer. But about a week before I was supposed to go to Vietnam, the captain came to see me. He said, "You're not going to Vietnam." I said, "Well, where am I going?" He said, "We'll tell you the day you go. We'll give you the thing."
Welcome to the Army.
Yeah, welcome to the Army. But about a week later, he says, "You're going to Turkey." I said, "What am I going to do in Turkey?" He said, "You go there." And I can't even tell you all the things why I was there, but you can imagine why I was there, especially since Russia was not too far away.
So what you're telling me then is the basis for your leadership training was in the Army.
Absolutely. 100%. And when that finished, I then went on to go get my MBA degree and my DBA degree. And I did that at George Washington University.
Mm-hmm. So let's fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
You were in the Army. You got your leadership training and basis for your leadership training there.
Absolutely, yeah.
You went back and got your graduate degrees, your MBA and your DBA.
Yeah.
Where did you start out your higher ed career? And how did you get to Tulane and then Case Western?
So the first school I got a job on after I got my BDA and everything else, after I got that, was Bucknell. So I went to Bucknell University and I was treating finance and economics and some other things. So after the second year, the dean calls me in and he says to me, "It's time for you to leave." And I said, "I don't understand. Did I do something wrong?" He said, "No." He said, "You are too good for this place. You need to go someplace else. You need to be at a major research university."
Wow.
And I wound up at Case Western Reserve University. That's how I wound there.
That's pretty good school.
Yeah, that was all right. So Case Western Reserve, I was there. And 38 at Case Western Reserve at the business school.
Wow.
Then what happened was I got an offer to go to Tulane University. And the reason I even thought about it is one of our donors, very big donors at Case, wanted me to go. And I said, I don't know about being a president of a university. So at the same time that happened, the president of Case Western was going to leave. So the board called me and said, you're going to be a candidate to be president of Case Western Reserve University. I said to them, by the way, I have another opportunity to go to Tulane University. But to be very honest with you, I didn't think they were going to take. I was a guy who went to these schools. I didn't go to the Harvard and all those. So people at Tulane said, you got to go. I said, the guys I'm going to run against are women, are from Harvard, Yale, everybody else. I'm a schmuck over there. It's not going to happen. So I go over there and I say, you know what? I got nothing else to lose other than I'm not going to do it and so on. Lo and behold, I get the job. Case Western Reserve calls me and says, hey, listen, we really want you here. I said, listen, I just got an offer for Tulane University. And you're just telling me maybe I'll be there. Not going to work for me. I'll take that job there.
Okay. You came into Tulane.
Yep.
How long after you were at Tulane did Katrina hit?
5 years.
So you got to Tulane in about 2000. Katrina hit 2005.
Right.
I remember talking to you about that, where you were running Tulane out of a hotel room in Houston for 8 months.
Yeah.
So there was that. You also taught leadership there at...
Not at that time, I did not.
Well, not at that time, but later on after you stepped down.
Yeah, later on.
Yeah. And then you've also taught at Case Western. Your first book, and I love the title, Winnebago's on Wednesdays, How Visionary Leadership Can Transform Higher Education. That speaks to what's going on right now, because higher ed is horrible when it comes to training leaders generally.
I agree.
What's the premise behind that book?
Winnebago's, I was thinking, this is what's happening in the world. This guy wants to go because he just wants to be over there because he'll be there all the time with the team. And I'm thinking to myself, really, this guy is walking away there because over there they'll have Winnebagos and everything before the games, and it'll be terrific. That's how it started. And when I started Winnebagos on Wednesday, everybody says, that's a really thing. I said, read the book and you'll understand why. The guy comes to me and he says, I got to take it because it's Winnebagos on Wednesday. I said, what do you mean? Then he explains it to me. I figured, you know what? This guy's got to go. He's not going to stay here.
Yeah. Well, for the listeners who haven't read the book, Scott, what you told me before was your head football coach shortly after you arrived at Tulane, and you had a fabulous football program at the time, which I'm a little upset because Tulane has come back and they've got a good program and they beat Navy this year, which is my alma mater. So we'll talk about it another time.
Yeah.
But your football coach came in and said, I'm moving to another program.
Yeah.
And you were going to offer him more money and everything else. And he said,
that's all true.
No, I want to be at a program where the boosters and the donors and everybody else drive their Winnebagos to the parking lot on Wednesdays because they're so excited about the football game coming up. And I can understand why you'd say, you need to go.
Yep. That's exactly true. It's always been to say, this is the way the world is now. This is what happens.
So let's talk about your new book. It's a different focus. Why is this book important now?
Well, I think there's two reasons why. And this is obviously just me talking. But I worry about the quality of leadership we have in our own country and around the world. And what I always wanted is to make sure that they start learning about leadership, certainly in college, but maybe in high school. Why not have it? Because I'll tell you why. When I was in high school, so supposedly I was a leader, right? No, I didn't know what to do, how to do, what would it look like. I didn't know any of those things because nobody told me. I just was glad that everybody liked me. So I got these things. And that really got me going about the book to say, that's what I want. I want them to learn when they're in high school, or college, or maybe been out a few years, and to learn about leadership and make sure that they do a better job in what they're going to do than my generation or the current generation is right now. So that's what really got me going into it. Then I decided at Tulane University, I'm going to do a course on leadership. I hadn't studied the topic. I'd read a lot of books and so on. They didn't have a class before on leadership. So I put one together, and this was actually after I wasn't president. I was just a faculty member there and so on. And it was very popular on the campus. And I enjoyed it because it forced me to remember things and think about things that I didn't know before with the students itself.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Now, there's some great takeaways from the book, and you already started talking about one of them. In high school, people are, quote, leaders there. And we come to understand the research and all these other things, but we come to understand that leaders aren't born. They grow over time. It's through the personal relationships.
Absolutely.
And most importantly, I think, how they respond to challenges.
Exactly. Both things. The first one that you just mentioned is where people get this idea from the day you were born, you're going to be a leader because you went to a family, you have a family house, whatever it may be. It's all bullshit. It isn't. It doesn't. Matter of fact, most of those people that came from really good were not good leaders at all. First thing is to make them understand you don't grow with this thing. You do it by learning about it and going through it. So that was very, very important to me. And I don't know about in your thing, but at both Tulane and Case Western, well, Case had a leadership class before I came in. Tulane didn't. We developed that one. And what's interesting is in the class, now I have it at Case, and I have 130 students in it.
Wow.
So on Tuesdays, I do what I call the plenary service. Plenary. I do it myself. And I also bring in from time to time guests to come in. You know, Walter Isaacson was one of my guests.
Great man. Great man.
You know what? I may ask you to do it. And I mean it. You don't have to come personally. You can do it Zoom.
I'd be honored.
And have a conversation like we're having here about leadership. And as much, if not more, than I know about this topic. I feel this is important. And then that's why I wanted all the time to say, you know what, now I want this in a book. Mm-hmm. And as you probably saw in the book, it's a workbook.
Yes.
And I like that because it's going to, not only do they have to read it, then they have to think about it, what they learned from it, and what are they going to change about their own self to do it. And there's no book that I know of, leadership book, that has that, a workbook like this one.
That's going to be very important as people start reading the book because it's giving them exercises, giving them things to think about. One of the other things I thought was really important about characteristics of leadership for the future is humility, resilience, transparency, and possibly the most important one of those, the ability to adapt to change. Now, of course, my wife is a very wise woman, and she says the only constant in this universe is change. But humility, this is almost a forgotten characteristic for many people nowadays.
Yeah, I think all those things you just said is absolutely correct. It is absolutely correct as we think going forward.
Yeah. So thinking back to your time at Tulane and hotel room, Houston, you had a team of folks that you were working with there. It wasn't the Scott Cowen show.
Not at all.
And you weren't looking for the recognition. You weren't looking for that. You just wanted to get one of the Grand Dame universities back up and running in New Orleans after having 8-foot floods inside your auditoriums.
That's absolutely correct. Listen, I had the best staff of people that anybody could imagine. And what we did every day, I would get everybody together and I'd say, what are our goals today? What do we have to get today to be able to have tomorrow? Tomorrow, we start and say, how do we do with what we said yesterday? And we had that going all the time. We really did. The other thing is, and this is going to seem really weird to you, every time there's something like this, like Katrina, COVID, everything else, I always think that there's silver linings, Chris's, and I believe that. And I'm proud to say I did a lot of that at Tulane University, especially in public education. So if you've ever seen the act I've had there, a matter of fact, there's an institute there called the Cowen Institute for Publication. We would have never done that if that hurricane hadn't happened, right? Yeah. So I learned a lesson about it. And people would always say, well, this or so on. I said, no, there's got to be silver linings here. I'm just going to sit here and say, well, this is what happened to it. Nothing good can come out of it. Let's think about what can come out of it. I'm really proud of how I did that at Tulane. And even at Case Western Reserve, when we had COVID, my favorite one about the COVID is, you know what the big silver lining is about COVID in higher ed?
Please.
Zoom.
Yes, I would agree. Zoom online education.
Zoom, you and I would never have used it. Well, it was never talked about it, much less used it. Now everybody uses it all the time. So there was a silver lining there.
Absolutely.
So I believe in that very strongly. I also believe in emotional intelligence. I assume you know all about. And Richard, who's done it, is a good friend of mine. And it's about leadership, and it's in the book and so on. Emotional intelligence, to me, if you don't have it, you might as well throw it away. If you have it, doesn't mean that you're still the best. You still got a lot of other things, but you're on the right side.
Absolutely. One of those overlooked things. I know most people move into leadership positions because they think they're the smartest person in the room. There was one other thing in the book that really struck me, Scott, and that was the importance of having mentors to talk to. You relayed to me stories about your mentors. Please share with us.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wouldn't be here today talking to you if I didn't have great mentors. Every place I've been, even when I came to Tulane University, I had it. I don't know if you ever heard of Norman Francis.
I have, actually.
Yeah, he's African-American. He was president for, I think, 50 years at Xavier University.
Oh, yeah.
He got one of the awards you can get from the President of the United States. And I am a big believer of those people who can help you. And I've had them all the time in my life. Even now, I have them. And you know who they are now? My wife. No, seriously, she's smart as hell. She's not afraid to yell at me and tell me what I'm doing, I'm not doing, and so on. And when I do class, she sits in the class. But mentors to me are so, to this day, I look to people besides my wife that can tell me something. And there's a very young lady at Case Western, Tracy, and she's great. And she teaches with me. And I've learned a lot from her. Mm-hmm. She's not up there, but she's great in what she does. And I've learned some things from her. So I think that's really important. It really does.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I look at my own career, I've had mentors along the way, some formal, some informal. But I also look at these podcasts. We've done what, 260 of these podcasts so far? Every single guest that I've had on the podcast, I've learned from. And the way that I look at it is, if you're not learning, you just ought to start dying.
Exactly. To this, given my age right now, 78 years old, I always say to the students, to somebody, hey, what do you think? Do you have your own view of it? Did I screw this thing up? And just talk to me about it. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's the way maybe I'll even live a longer life, that we always have to be learners and leaders to the best we can. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think also, too, learning from others, you have to have humility to be able to do that, to believe, even if you know you've got an IQ of 150, there's a lot of things that you can learn from other people.
Absolutely.
And this, to me, is the whole point of diversity. It's not black and orange and purple and whatever the color of your skin. It's the diversity of thought, diversity of experiences. These are really critical to be able to bring people together and say, hey, you've lived a different life than I have. I'd like to learn about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can learn from the kids, by the way, also all the time.
Absolutely.
And it's one of the reasons why I put the work in there. I want them not just to read the thing, I want them to sit down and reflect on what they learned and what are they going to do going forward about what they learned. And if I can get them to do that, I'll feel like I did something important with.
There's one other piece before we wrap up that I really like to touch on.
Sure.
And that was something that I heard you talk about back in your days in the hotel room in Houston, is setting the course. What did we do yesterday? Here's what we have to do today.
Right.
This is one of those critical things that leaders have to do, is build a shared vision.
Yep, you got it. That was right there. Plus, it also helped them, their morale, to be very honest with you. By the way, if they didn't do it, I didn't yell and say, hey, you didn't do that. You're an idiot. You can't do that. And I would say, let's think about that. Was there something else we could have done, we should have done, what we're going to do going forward? And it wasn't to say to someone, you didn't do it or you didn't do it right. It was, hey, listen, what do you think about it? I just thought about, just like you're asking me a question, maybe you could think about this or something else. It's interesting. The lawyer that I had at Tulane, she couldn't get with the game plan. She could not get with the game plan. And I said to her, listen, you got to get to the game plan. You're thinking about way life used to be. It's changed. It's different. And I'm not asking you to do anything that's inappropriate, to do anything else, but you got to just stop about what we used to do and think about what we're going to do in there. Because once again, the silver linings, that's always been in my mind, and especially because of Katrina. And I told her, and if you can't get it done in a few months, you're done. She turned around. She's terrific.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's what it is. As you say in your book, and we've talked about, being a leader doesn't necessarily mean that you're the person's friend. You're there to help them grow, and through that to help the institution grow.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct.
Tell me about your thinking out loud, because I know that's one of the key things that you do as far as building leaders and getting their input, which is also important.
Yeah. Once this happened, every single day, I would write an email to everybody.
Wow.
And tell them what we're doing, what's working, and what we still have to work on. Just virtually every day.
Was this from the hotel room in Houston, or was this just part of your normal course?
No, that was started.
That was the crisis communications.
That's right, because they were worried. They were worried about themselves, their homes, and everything else.
Sure.
So my view was every single day, put a note out. And that turned to be very important. Then when I went to Case and it was COVID, I did a mail there all the time called Thinking Out Loud and doing the same thing with them. The people there to this day still love that. They say, we still can't get over the things you told us about and so on, and about the fact that there's silver linings. We're either going to be a victim or we're going to be something else. And I'm not a person who's a victim. So we're going to go the other way. And they enjoyed it. And we would talk and we would get together every morning, just like I did at Tulane. I did it there at COVID. And they always say, we loved your things that you wrote. They were so nice and so like you. And I said, I do the best I can do.
Yeah. During those periods of time, whether it was Tulane, whether it was Case, you gave people hope. You didn't sugarcoat things. You didn't say, oh gosh, our finances are great when they're really not. You were honest, you were transparent, but you gave them hope. And that's what people need, is to be given hope.
Yeah. No, there's one more question there you didn't ask. And what's the view? And you'll see the last chapter of my book was that question. And I've been really thinking about it a lot because, and I tell everybody, I'm not as good as I used to be. I'm simply not. So the question is, do you just say goodbye and go off into someplace else? I don't know. So I tell everybody, I worry about whether I'm as good as I used to be, and that bothers me. And if other people feel that way, they should tell it to me. But I think I've come to the point where I've probably contributed as much as I can contribute, the book being the last thing. And I don't have many more years, and maybe it's time to take those years and do things. That doesn't mean that I may not do a cameo at one of the universities there, which I do anyway. I'll do that. So that one's a very important, especially for old people like me who have been leaders for a long, long time. rather than just ignoring the fact that you're not as good as you used to be. So that's the only thing. Okay.
Well, thank you. That's great. So you preempted my what's next for you question. So thank you. But
Yeah.
we've had a really nice conversation, and I appreciate your honesty and talking about the book, et cetera. Give me 3 takeaways for presidents and boards and leaders. What can they do to help build the leadership muscle that's so needed in higher ed today?
It's an interesting question because it's a question in the book. What does winning look like? I have a chapter there. I think the most important part is to sit down and answer the question you just asked me. It is, here we are, we're getting through this and so on. What does winning really look like? What do you want to look like? Does the university want to get back? Does something else want to get back? And so on. So I think the only answer I have for that one is that's one of the questions I always ask. And if someone can't say it, and say, I'm not sure of this, I ask you, why not? Why do you not know or think about or talk about what does it look like for the future? And I always do that for myself. That's why I'm thinking for myself, I should go a little different way. I don't know that a lot of presidents think about that, but that's one of the most important things in leadership, right? Leadership is to sit down and say, what does the next thing look like? What can I do from there? And that's why I put a chapter in the book. So I don't know. That's the answer to your question.
Very good. Scott, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Oh, are you kidding me? I've had fun with this.
I have as well. I wish you guys all the best, and I look forward to the next time our paths cross. And as far as your invite to come to your class, you just let me know. I'll be there, sir.
All right. I'm counting on it now. Now, by the way, what topic would you like to talk about?
Whatever you want to talk about.
It's going to be about leadership. And seriously, what's the thing that you would say, I thought the most about this or whatever about this? Do you have one like that?
Yes. Authentic leadership.
Beautiful.
Authentic leadership.
Emotional intelligence. The man has got emotional intelligence.
I would like to think so. I don't know. You'd have to ask my wife on that one.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Thanks for listening, and a special thank you to my guest, Dr. Scott Cowen. Scott, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I look forward to the next time our paths cross. For my listeners, thanks again for tuning in. See you next week.
Changing Higher Ed is a production of The Change Leader, a consultancy committed to transforming higher ed institutions. Find more information about this topic, along with show notes on this episode at changinghighered.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the show, and we would also value your honest rating and review. Email any questions, comments, or recommendations for topics or guests to podcast@changinghighered.com. Changing Higher Ed is produced and hosted by Dr. Drumm McNaughton, post-production by David L. White.